So Andi Markee, your friend, our friend, Chris Forbes, said in her nomination of you for this honor that you have an, quote, obvious drive and passion for getting things done in a spectacular way. And then your boss, Scott Turner, said you only know one speed, and that is, quote, complete and ultimate dedication to the success of whatever you're involved in. Where do you think that comes from?
You know, that's hard to say. I have a self-motto of make it happen, no matter what. And I think that I've just really gotten that over the years, just trying to be a good person, trying to do everything that I'm involved in 100%. In college, you know, waiting tables, I wanted to be the best waitress. I wanted to be the best strategic alliance manager. I wanted to be the best volunteer. And so I feel, you know, maybe sometimes I'm a little too hard on myself, but just trying to make things happen and take action to get things accomplished. Now,
in a management and leadership position, is that sometimes difficult for you because maybe others don't show the sort of dedication that you do?
Yes and no. So I'm in a unique type of management position to where I don't have subordinates per se, but I, represent our organization, and I think it's hard sometimes to delegate responsibility and to not hold it all on yourself and let other people, maybe do a part of that project. And so that's, one thing I'm always learning and always trying to evolve is just to let go of some of that control and maybe help people become more solution-oriented as opposed to just focusing on the problem.
Now, your drive, was it something you had to grow into, or do you think that was always with you even as a kid?
Yeah. I think I've always had that. My mom was a single mother up until I was 16 years old, and I saw her independence and her drive to work hard and to support our family, and so I learned a lot from her, just to be very independent and just to do the best you can and be satisfied that you did the best you can, and that's the result of it.
You mentioned just a moment ago that you are a strategic alliance manager in the public sector for Time Clock Plus. So what does that mean, strategic
yes.
alliance manager?
My friends kind of glaze over because it is kind of a unique title. So Time Clock Plus is a software company that does time and attendance for hourly employees, and that goes hand in hand with payroll organizations, with HR software. And so it's my job to create these relationships with other software companies throughout the United States so that our solution can be integrated for our end user customers. We want that time to go into payroll so the employees get paid. I also am responsible for identifying resellers within those software companies, which extends our reach of the Time Clock Plus software, and not only if inside organization can sell this system, but we have other people selling the system for us.
One of the things about Time Clock Plus that has always fascinated me is it seems to have sort of a corporate culture where everyone works really hard at Time Clock Plus, and they're really dedicated, and you would think that would wear on people, but they seem to love it. Where do you think that culture comes from?
Well, that culture comes from our founder, George Ellis, and he has a culture of servant leadership. And even, somebody within the organization might not be in that leadership role, but we're all leaders in some way. And so it's really a culture of family, a culture of teaching and enablement. And, we want to promote within, we want to build our employees up so that they feel satisfied at work and satisfied in the community. And Time Clock Plus gives a lot of opportunities for our employees to get involved in the community. So not only enriching their work life, but their personal life.
Because their culture is so driven and that's how you are personally, do you feel like that's sort of a perfect marriage for you?
There's definitely some synergy. I was recruited to work at Time Clock Plus from my previous employer because I had a relationship with them, and Scott Turner had just kind of noticed my drive, and I was willing to do anything. Even though the role I was in was a higher level role, I was still moving railroad ties and doing things to make an event successful. And so he felt that I embodied the culture of Time Clock Plus, which is to do whatever it takes for the customer and to do what's right for the organization.
Do you think that sort of culture, is it difficult to cultivate and then maintain once you have it?
Absolutely, absolutely. Time Clock Plus has done it well. I mean, 30 years this year, our anniversary, and they've built that culture since day one. And so I would say it's probably difficult for other organizations to sometimes understand. We work really hard, but at the same time we're rewarded for that. So like today, for instance, we had our first of the month company luncheon. They provided lunch for everybody within the organization and named their top performers. And so that brings us together every month to celebrate each other.
Now, I think my favorite Time Clock Plus event that I've heard of is Dress Like Scott Turner Day.
Yes. Yes.
So what do you wear on that day?
So maybe a polo shirt with some shorts, and Scott Turner is maybe lacking in the hair department, so a bald cap, but always a smile.
So you mentioned your previous job. You previously worked as the market manager for Town Square Media, and you actually promoted a couple of times into that job. And when you attained that job, you were the youngest female manager in the third largest radio group in the nation. What are you most proud of during your time in radio?
There's a couple of things. So I started with Town Square as the live event manager. And within that organization, we have the opportunity to put on events that profit nonprofits within the organization. So I was able to do mud runs that benefited the outlying fire departments. Was able to be a part of raising almost $350,000 for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. And for me, that's something that stayed with me. Boomer Kingston and I got to visit the hospital a couple years and just see the work that they do for catastrophic pediatric cancers and curing them and even treating them. And so for me, that was a very huge impact at my time with Town Square, as well as just, evolving into that leadership role. That was my first leadership role. And I made some mistakes, but you also learn from that, and that's a big part of leadership is trying things out, and if that doesn't work, then you change and try to do it better.
Of course, as part of this award, no surprise you're involved in a lot of volunteer activities. How do you decide which of those you're going to dedicate your time and your talent and your treasure toward?
So that's difficult to say. So I have a really great friend group, and a lot of my friends are involved in other organizations as well, and so I get to kind of piggyback off of them. So one of them that I've become passionate about and just really spreading the message is West Texas Counseling and Guidance. They do amazing work in the community, and I'm very close to some of the board members and coordinators over there, and so I really love to show up at their events and do what I can to participate and share the message, and that one has become close to my heart. And of course, I do love animals. I know we're going to talk about that a little bit, but I just recently joined the United Way Impact Committee, and I'm very excited because that organization helps 19 different programs or 19 different nonprofits within the community, and so now I can really help one organization that has impact throughout different nonprofits.
So when you're looking to volunteer or help out in some sort of way, is there some common denominator that you're looking for, something that sort of moves you?
I wouldn't say there's a common denominator per se. I would just the message, because there's so many worthy causes. There's, curing cancer, rescuing animals, getting people the counseling they need, and it's really difficult to choose just one. And so I just try to do a little bit with all of them. I think, if there's an event, I would love to support that financially and participate, maybe even learning about them and sharing the message with other people in the community on how they can get involved.
We mentioned about animal rescue, and you've been involved in a couple of those different groups. What about that cause moves you?
So my husband and I don't have children. We have fur children, and animals have always been a big part of my life growing up. And so, they're just fun. They just love you unconditionally, and they're helpless. And we've had, as you know, an animal control issue here in San Angelo, and there's been some recent things that have been put in place to help that with the spay and neutering and the microchipping and the way that our shelter's been reorganized. And so I'm really proud of those steps that we're taking to help San Angelo really kind of keep their homeless animals in control. So I think that I'm just really passionate because I just love animals, and that's a fun organization to be a part of, and plus I do have a really close friend, Kelsey Hall, who is very active in animal rescue, and she kind of pushes me and motivates me along to get involved as well.
Of course, it's one of the things that the city sort of talks about a lot.
Yeah.
Is we don't really have a pet problem, we have a pet ownership problem.
Yes.
Here, where people are not practicing responsible pet ownership because they don't spay or neuter their animals or have them vaccinated. Does that frustrate you at times that that people sort of aren't taking care of their responsibilities they have toward their pets?
It does. It does. Just because you have to take responsibility of a commitment you make no matter what. And if that's a commitment to own an animal, part of that responsibility is to make sure that they're spayed and neutered, that they have proper vetting, that they have a proper enclosure. And if life situations change, you change with that pet. You change as a family. And I think a big frustrating thing in the animal community is people that might move and they can't take their pets, and a pet that's been with you for years doesn't understand, and it's heartbreaking to see them at the shelter. They have emotions, they're crying, they're traumatized from the shelter, and so it makes them very hard to be adopted afterwards because of that trauma that they've received, and it's hard for them to acclimate into a home. So that's why fosters are very important, because they can help those animals transition back into a family.
Again, from one of your nomination forms, your friend Chris Forbes wrote that leadership comes naturally to Andi. Do you think that's true?
No. I think that leadership is tough. Leadership is really just trying to be the best person you can be, and I'm surprised to hear her say that, but it's a very nice compliment. I just try to work hard and just do the best I can, and if that's viewed as leadership, then I'm really appreciative of that. So.
Well, she also wrote that you are not afraid to speak up when needed and not afraid to listen when that's called for. Do you agree with that?
I do. I tend to be a little more vocal than I should. I've learned to maybe pause for a minute, let other people talk. My opinion, I try to kind of always see both sides. Back in my high school days, I always thought I would go and be a lawyer. So I have a knack for seeing both sides of the coin, and I tend to jump in and give my opinion when needed and maybe when not needed.
So how do you try to go about telling the difference about when your voice is needed versus maybe when your ears are needed?
I think that listening is important in any type of engagement you have, professionally and personally. And so really, if you are a good listener, then you'll know when it's time to speak. And I think one of my mentors has really taught me to kind of slow down and listen first before, even if you know the question, wait till the question's finished, and then you can kind of jump in and respond. So it's something I've had to work on.
So your boss, Scott Turner, described you as, he said, independent, outspoken, creative, optimistic, compassionate, authentic. Is there any one of those that you think rings especially true for you?
I would say authentic. I try to be honest, and I try to just follow directions and follow my leaders and make sure that I'm representing my company in the way that it needs to be represented. And then from a personal standpoint, spending time with family and friends and just being authentic in our everyday engagement. So
you and I are friends, and I think it's very fair to say that you are a person who seems very comfortable in their own skin.
Yes. I don't know how. I'm blessed to feel comfortable and confident, and some people have to work for that, and I have to work for it too. And I think whenever you do things like this or public speaking, or when I was in live events, the nerves are good. That's kind of what fuels performance. And I may look comfortable all the time, but sometimes I am just screaming inside, and you just work through that and do the best you can do.
Well, it strikes me as kind of funny because Chris Forbes, who is a former 20 under 40 honoree,
is.
nominated you, and Scott Turner, who's very accomplished in many regards in his own right, nominated you, and yet you still feel a little uncertain as to whether you're worthy of this.
I do, and it's hard to really say why. I think that you have to just try to be humble and try to be, I don't know, almost conservative. And I can understand some traits that I have and some things that I've done through the community that would maybe make me a candidate for this. But at the same time, it's such an honor. And just the class this year has just accomplished so many great things. And I think, we are our own worst critic. And one of the things is that I'm very self-aware and sometimes hard on myself. And so maybe I just need to accept and embrace, which I'm trying to do.
So Andi, how do you define leadership?
So leadership, to me, has a lot of different characteristics, and I think motivating people to do their best and obviously enabling other people to be leaders is that servant leadership that Time Clock Plus culture is all about. For me as well, I think that just really communicating with people and continuing to learn and evolve as a person, because leaders make mistakes as well, and so being very self-aware in that and just growing from different experiences, I think makes a great leader. And leaders are always evolving, and Time Clock Plus has that culture of promoting and educating and evolving people into the leadership roles. So,
is there someone that you feel like has inspired and helped shape you and your leadership?
Well, you've mentioned two of them a couple of times. Chris Forbes and Scott Turner have very large impacts in my life. My mentor in my role as Strategic Alliance Manager, Jesse Gunder, has had a very huge impact in the way that I've evolved as a business person and relating to these other organizations that we're creating partnerships with, because it's scary sometimes talking to the president of a company and a CEO. And so he's been a really great mentor for me in helping me just become a better business person.
So one of the things that strikes me about your community involvement is you really seem to love this community. What do you love about San Angelo?
I love everything about San Angelo. We moved to Dallas for a brief time and did everything we could to come back, because San Angelo is about community. There are so many fun different activities to do. There's all kinds of ways that people can get involved to give back. And so I just think that San Angelo has that small town culture, but with a lot of big town amenities. And I don't know that everybody takes advantage of that. So really just kind of getting the message out that there's fun things to do and people to see. And I know the city does a really great job of that. And we're growing in our city events and community involvement. So that's just really what I love about San Angelo, and of course the people.
So Andi Markee, you are indeed worthy of being 20 under 40.
Thank
Congratulations.
you. Thank you.